I'd like now to invite Nick and Tamar, who are from Stonewall, and are going to talk to us about Stonewall Young Futures. So Nick, over to you.
Hello, hi everyone. I think there's some intros on there, then I can kick off. So yeah, my name's Nick Slater. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them, and I am the Stonewall Young Futures manager. And I'll be telling you in a bit what Stonewall Young Futures is. If we have back, actually, just for Tamar to introduce herself. Sorry, Cam. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Tamar Moshkovitz. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Youth Engagement Officer. And I'll talk about youth engagement on Stonewall Young Futures.
So on to the next slide. Thank you. So I guess even before I go through what this session is, I don't want to assume any knowledge here, but Stonewall as an organisation, put your hands up if you've heard of Stonewall before. Good, okay, so I can assume some knowledge. It's just worth checking though. But in this session, we're going to be speaking about a really specific area of our work. So I'm going to start off by talking about Shut Out, which is a research report we ran looking into the experiences of young people aged 16 to 24 who are not in education, training or work. I'll then move on to talk to you about Stonewall Young Futures, which is the project that came about because of that research. And then Tamar's going to talk to you about the insights that we've got from the young people we've been working with, which I think is probably the highlight of this presentation. No pressure, Tamar. But it's a really good chance to hear from the young people that we've been working with. And then there will be time for discussion, Q&A as well. And everyone online, please do pop in questions in the chat. And I know Cam and Lila will feed them to us so that we can answer at the end. Thanks, Cam. So Shut Out as a piece of research, like I said, looked into the experiences of LGBTQ+ young people not in education, training or work. I was really grateful that Sue did a presentation on language because language is really important. And the piece of language I want to talk to here is, you might have heard the phrase NEET. Put your hand up if you know the NEET. Yeah.
Not in employment, education or training,
Exactly.
and they're all in further education in the UK.
Yes. So NEET is what the government use, and it's used globally. Like the UN use it as well. It is a useful term, but we're not using it really intentionally because in our project we're trying to reach young people, and I don't know one young person who actually identifies as NEET. No young person turns around and goes, "Oh, I'm a NEET young person," or "I'm NEET and LGBTQ+." And we're doing a project to try and access it and reach these people. So we've been really careful, and we worked with young people to choose the language to use. And this is a more descriptive term, and we're talking about young people who are not in education, training or work. Cam, thank you. I say that, but then we've got NEET on the slide here, but that's because it's a government statistic. So like I said, we still need to say it sometimes because the government use it. But this actually is just a general background on what the situation is like for young people right now in the UK who are not in education, training or work. So these stats came out, they show the period between October and December 2021, and they were released by the ONS in 2022. And what it shows that an estimated 10.2% of all people who are 16 to 24 are not in education, training or work at any one time. So that's approximately 700,000 young people at any one time are out of the system. That could be for so many different reasons. And then what I've drawn out here from some of the statistics from the Commons Library research is the disparity in those groups. And I'm sure this won't come as a surprise to any of us here, especially those that are educators, is that those that identify or are seen under the Equality Act as disabled, there's a much higher proportion of those who fall into this category, a lot higher proportion of people who don't have qualifications and different levels of qualifications, and also different proportions based on race and ethnicity. However, there's a big thing missing here. Does anyone want to tell me what's missing of these statistics?
Well, could it be LGBT?
Yes, Sue, it's LGBT. So the government have never looked into that. No one's ever looked into that crossover between being out of education, training or work and being LGBTQ+. The next slide. So that is why it came out in 2020, Stonewall ran this piece of research. And that is what I mean when I say shut out. So it's a qualitative piece of research. It has some really in-depth interviews with a group of LGBTQ plus people who are not in education, training or work. And it was commissioned because the government had noticed that gap and gone, right, no one's ever done this research into it before. So we commissioned it with Britain Thinks. It is available online. It's still on our website. For anyone interested in that, I'd really recommend looking it up and having a read through. And later I will be bringing out some of the kind of verbatim quotes from the young people we spoke to. And the content warning there is that there are really direct kind of quotes and experiences of discrimination, homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia that I will talk through in a bit. Next slide, cheers. So the core findings, I guess the key thing to say from this report is that none of it was surprising to Stonewall, but it doesn't mean it wasn't shocking. And what it was is that there's lots of barriers that young people who are not in education, training or work might face throughout their life. And that could be that they are care experienced, they might be carers themselves, perhaps physical health, bereavement, mental health. And those, as we know, we've spoken, I think every single presentation, rightly so, has spoken about intersectionality. And we recognise that those are compounded with LGBTQ plus issues. So for young people, if they're experiencing bullying or hate crime in school, in college, if they're experiencing that in the home, perhaps they're living in a hostile environment. We know how many of the young people from our community experience homelessness or estrangement from their families. All of those issues compound with the general experiences of young people. And what was really interesting from our research is that one of the biggest barriers that impacts this group is not the initial entering of education, training or work, but actually the re-entering. So it might be that a young person leaves school at 16 or has a bad first experience in their first apprenticeship or in a training experience or their first ever job, they have a bad experience. And then they really struggle with re-entering education, training or work. And that's how they become disengaged. Thanks, Cam. So this is where I'm going to talk through just a few of the experiences from the Shutout report. I will note all these names here have been changed to protect anonymity. And all of these kind of, again, I recognise because language is really important. All of these choices of language have been chosen by the young people themselves. So you will see a slight change with how people identify. So this is a young person called Aisha, lesbian, 16, BAME, and in Scotland. And Aisha said, I always got verbal abuse at school that was particularly targeted by one girl. I didn't want to go to school and even told my mum to ring the school about it, and it never got dealt with. Thanks, Cam. This next one is from someone called Jamie, who's a non-binary person, 19 years old, white, and in England. And Jamie said, he was a dodgy boss. He made me feel unsafe. He was anti-LGBT and said that if any employees were gay, he'd fire them. So I left. I felt unsafe as an LGBT person. And the final one, from Sean, a trans man who's 24, identifies as BAME, POC, and is based in England. Sean said, I went to college, but I hated it. I dropped out after 2 months. There were loads of trans-related things. There were less rules, so it's easier to pick on someone. So there were more comments like, that's a girl. There were all these examples of teachers thinking I was joking when I answered to my birth name on registers. It was very isolating. So I'm sure for all of us, we can recognise that any of those experiences may lead a young person to fall out of these systems and really struggle to get re-engaged and enter back into education, training or work. The report itself has a whole range of recommendations targeted towards different groups. So there are kind of different level of government recommendations through Westminster to local government, recommendations for educators, recommendations for workplaces. But the key recommendation I'm going to focus on here is a recommendation that we worked on with young people. So we ran a workshop and we asked young people who were not in education, training or work, if Stonewall could get some money from somewhere to do something about this and try and alleviate some of these barriers you're facing and to help you get back into education, training or work, what would you want? And the answer was really clear. What they said is we want an online space, something that's easily accessible. And it kind of is a one-stop shop for everything that we know is kind of out there, but we want it curated and collated for us. So we want career advice, we want guidance, we want case studies from other queer people who are like me and have maybe also left school, maybe have taken an apprenticeship, maybe had a bad experience in their first job. And we want signposting tools and resources. And that is Stonewall Young Futures. So that is what we've brought together. So I will spend a kind of another 10 minutes or so talking you through what Stonewall Young Futures is. But before I do that, I think it's best to actually hand over to some of the young people we've been working with. So Cam's going to play this video and we're going to hear from 4 of the young people that have been part of the project and have worked with us on focus groups. And that's Cara, DL, Amy, and Peter. So I'll get out of the way and you can hear from them.
Welcome to Stonewall Young Futures. This is a space for all young lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, questioning, and ace people in the UK.
This is a space made with LGBTQ+ young people for LGBTQ+ young people.
It's okay not to know what you want to do with your future. You can come here to explore and feel inspired.
On this site, you can come as you are. There's no right or wrong way to do things. Take a look at all the different options and try some new opportunities. Learn about what's out there and see what works for you.
Hear from other LGBTQ+ people about what they're doing and the paths they took to get there.
This site has been designed in collaboration with LGBTQ+ young people.
In the My Future section, you can look through resources to explore your options, find inspiration, and get support. Different resources are listed under education, apprenticeships, training and skills, and work.
Head to LGBTQ+ stories to hear from other people about their journeys. There's no one way to take the next step, and you'll discover lots of different paths that people have taken to get where they are today.
In the LGBTQ+ support section, you'll find useful resources to support your mental health, find local youth groups, and learn about your rights. There's also support for people living in hostile environments or experiencing homelessness.
Take a look at our partners to find out more about the brilliant organisations that support Stonewall Young Futures.
Do you want to be a part of Stonewall Young Futures? You can subscribe to the mailing list on this page.
If you're an LGBTQ+ young person, aged 16 to 24, there will also be opportunities to get involved, share your story, and tell us your feedback.
Wonderful.
So hopefully that explains it quite well, but I've just actually what that video reminded me is I brought loads of flyers with me and I haven't done anything with them and they're in my bag just in that room. So afterwards I will go around with some flyers and we've got our beautiful illustrations on those flyers and it also has the web address. So I'd encourage you all to take a look at the Stonewall Young Futures website. It sits as part of stonewall.org.uk, so it's on our main platform. It's got all of those areas that the young people talked about and it has been made with them. So that's what Tamar will speak about, is how we co-produce this resource with LGBTQ+ young people. Now, we also, as well as working with young people, which has been a great part of this project, we've worked really collaboratively across all different sectors because we've recognized that we can't do it alone. At Stonewall, we do have expertise in LGBTQ+ inclusion, but we're not experts in further education. We're not experts in higher education or apprenticeships or training or schools. So we've tried to establish kind of a wide advisory group who have helped me along the way. So I started as project manager in September 2021. We launched the site February this year. And the first thing I did in September was try and establish this advisory group. So you can see we're working with a really wide range of organisations. AKT, brilliant organisation supporting youth homelessness, Barnardo's, Careers Wales, the Prince's Trust, World Skills UK, Youth Employment UK, Association of Colleges, and Pearson, who you'll be hearing from after me with Maya. Now, all of these organisations have been brilliant to guide me along the way and tell me what I'm doing wrong and also what I'm doing well and kind of create the best site we can. But what they've been brilliant at as well is the reach. So I'd encourage all of you, because I know lots of people who put their hands up with teachers, this is a great resource to share with the young people you work with. So I'll give you loads of flyers to take back to the kids you work with. But what these organisations have been great at is also spreading the word. So the Prince's Trust work across all 4 nations of the UK. They work with young people who are not in education, training or work. And I've done sessions with staff at the Prince's Trust to support them, to support the young people they work with. So we're really conscious with this project, we have a key audience, which is 16 to 24-year-olds, but actually what our secondary audience is almost just as important, and that's key referrers. So it's anyone across settings. So that could be someone in a GP practice, it could be a care worker, obviously educators, people who work in early career services and big organisations. All of those key referrers are so crucial to being upskilled so that they have access to our resource, so that they can support the young people they work with. Now, we couldn't do this, like I said at the start. I said we kind of put this proposal to young people saying, if Stonewall found some money, what could we do? Fortunately, we did, and we're really, really grateful to the corporate partners we've got on board for this project. So the project was funded and kind of kick-started by Aviva and Naked Smoothies. They're both committed organisations who work through our Diversity Champions programme, and they're really committed to supporting young people as well. We're establishing a wider corporate panel as well, so we're going to end up with about 8 different corporate partners supporting this project long term. And what I like about Naked Smoothies, they've actually come up with quite a creative way to raise money for this project, and throughout, it's end of June now, isn't it? Yeah. So throughout June and July this year, they've been selling their rainbow naked smoothie with 5p of every bottle going directly towards this project. And they did that last year as well. So they do kind of on-bottle promotions and things like that. So you can go ahead and buy them and help support this project in another way. Now, in terms of what the site is, I will let you explore it in your own time, and you can click through, and there's loads of stuff on the site for you to look at. But again, another thing that I was really pleased to hear come up in all the presentations previously is that holistic support that young people need, especially in an education setting. So we recognise that it wouldn't be useful if we created a site that just had some tips on how to write your CV and kind of how to do a good job application, because all the barriers that young people were facing were across every aspect of their life. So our site at the moment has over 50 different signposting links. They've all been quality assured. So for every one of those organisations, we check their commitment to LGBTQ+ inclusion and also their commitment to safeguarding. And the different areas that the links cover are education, apprenticeships, training and skills, but also mental health, self-advocacy. Through our focus groups, we've learned a lot from young people that they don't know what their rights are in the workplace. No one tells them that a young neurodivergent or disabled person gets access to additional support at work. They don't know that's the law. They don't know that there is the law protecting you under the Equality Act 2010. So we're trying to encourage a bit of self-advocacy. We've also got links to youth groups and homelessness support as well. So it's meant to be a kind of holistic place where a young person can go and get all the support they need that will help them take that next step. And then we've also got a bit of a hub. It's 5 at the moment. I'm really hoping to build it as the years go on. It's a bit of a library of LGBTQ+ stories. So Tamar will tell you a bit more about it, but one of the key things young people have been asking us for time and time again is we want to see other people like us. That whole premise of you can't be what you can't see. So at the moment, we've got 5 different stories. 4 of them are in video format with people who have taken really different routes through education, training or work and are thriving as queer people now. And one of my favorite things in the bottom right here, you'll see a beautiful illustration. We've worked with a really wide range of queer illustrators. All the illustrations you'll see are by young queer illustrators. And we actually commissioned an illustrator to illustrate a queer young person's story, their story through school, their story into getting into work now. And it's a beautiful illustration with a bit of a Q&A alongside of Chimtango, a young person in the path they took. So I'm hoping that will build up as we go ahead. So I'm going to swap with Tamar now, and she's going to tell you more about how we've worked with young people.
It's so nice to be here. I'm really excited to share some insights from our youth focus groups with you. But if first I can talk a little bit about how we approach youth engagement on this project. So co-production approach was really central to this project. You know, it's been said 1,000 times already in this conference, but nothing about us without us. We believe that LGBTQ+ young people know what they need and that they need a platform where they can influence decisions about the services that impact them. And so we created a social media campaign to recruit young people to be involved. And we had over 120 applicants from a really diverse range of backgrounds from across all 4 nations, which was obviously a really incredible response. And of those 120 applicants, we've had over 30 LGBTQ+ young people take part in our youth focus group so far. So we've actually run 3 focus groups. One was supposed to take place last week, but we've pushed it forward. So we held one in November 2021, one in January 2022, one in May 2022, and we're running 3 more youth focus groups, 2 in the next week and 1 in July. And it was really important for us to have a strong representation of LGBTQ+ young people of colour, trans young people, and disabled and neurodivergent LGBTQ+ young people. As Nick mentioned earlier, these groups of young people are most likely to suffer from lack of access to education, training and work. And so it was really important for us that we platform their voices. We wanted to offer payment to all young people. We wanted to feel that young people, that their contributions were valued and their time was valued. And we consulted with an expert on how to best do this in a way that wouldn't impact young people's benefit payments if they were receiving benefits. And so we ended up offering young people a mixture of direct payment and gift vouchers, which was, of course, made possible thanks to our corporate partners. The youth focus groups were facilitated by 2 members of Stonewall staff, along with some additional members to support with tech support, safeguarding and note-taking. And we had 2 external consultants. One was a wellbeing consultant and one was a SEND support consultant. And that was to make sure that young people who took part could engage in a way that was comfortable and accessible to them. Thanks, Cam. So what were some of these insights and themes? First, let's talk about what young people told us the barriers were to education, training and work. A lot of young people had expectations of discrimination, whether it was in education and training or in work, and unfortunately that was informed by past experience. Young people feared coming out in the workplace and in other settings. They weren't sure how they might be received by their managers, their colleagues, their fellow students. There was a fear of a lack of understanding, especially around the needs and rights of trans young people. For instance, how do I let my manager know that I need medical leave, or can I use my name in the application process? There was a lack of support in the workplace, and this is especially true for disabled young people. There was a lack of self-esteem for a lot of young people, especially those who have faced rejection or faced discrimination in the workplace. Those knockbacks can really take effect on someone's self-esteem. And a lot of young people felt uncertain about their future. They weren't sure what they'd be good at, they weren't sure what they'd enjoy, and sometimes they didn't even know really where to start. And finally, unfortunately, mental health was a major barrier to LGBTQ+ young people. And this is even more so in the aftermath of the pandemic, which really took effect on LGBTQ+ young people's mental health and self-esteem. So some quotes from our youth participants. We're told things like, be confident, but we're never told how to do it. So young people don't feel like there's a lot of practical advice about how to thrive in the workplace as an LGBTQ+ young person. It can be really hard to build up self-esteem after lots of knockbacks. Again, that self-confidence is so key to LGBTQ+ young people succeeding in career and education, and rejection can really impact that. I don't actually know what reasonable adjustments I need from a workplace, because I don't think I've actually ever been offered that support from a workplace. And this quote actually came from a disabled LGBTQ+ young person who we spoke to. And it's so clear just how important it is for employers to provide proactive support, especially to disabled and LGBTQ+ young people. Okay, so on a slightly more positive note, what could you, as people who work with LGBTQ+ young people, do to support them in taking the next step into their future? Visibility was really important. Seeing and hearing from LGBTQ+ people and their testimonies, that's been said over and over again today. Resources which specifically mention LGBTQ+ people helps young people feel that their challenges are recognised and being addressed. Whether in the form of youth groups or staff support networks, community is really important. Young people need support from peers and other LGBTQ+ people. Diversity and intersectional experiences must be recognised. We've spoken a lot about intersectionality today, and it's just important to remember that an LGBTQ+ young person is much more than just LGBTQ, and we need to keep that in mind. Reassurance. Young people want to feel safe when they come to talk about their future, and they want to feel like it's okay to feel uncertain. Honesty. Young people want to be better prepared for the workplace. They want to know what to expect. They don't want tall promises. They just want realistic expectations. And finally, knowledge and confidence in dealing with discrimination in the workplace. What are my rights? How can I exercise them? And that is not just to do with facing homophobia and transphobia, but also ableism, racism, and other forms of discrimination. Thank you. Some more quotes. I think hearing older people's perspectives helps you think about the future, and hearing people your age helps you realize that you can do something now. So we want representation of LGBTQ+ young people's careers at every stage. A great job for anyone else may not be ideal for queer young people entering employment. Seeing real queer young people's opinions would be hugely helpful. And again, you know, LGBTQ+ young people trust other LGBTQ+ young people, and those that sort of credibility and that community is really useful. I think I would click on this website purely with it being associated with Stonewall and knowing they have my best interests in mind. This is a bit of a humble brag, but also it's so important to create an atmosphere where young people trust you and can confide in you. And finally, this one speaks for itself. Seeing people like you or who share experiences with you is a really powerful thing in and of itself, especially when you see people like you being supported, championed, included, and centered. Really powerful quote, in my opinion. So what's next? As I mentioned earlier, we've got 3 more youth focus groups coming up. The first will focus on trans young people's voices. The next will be about coming out, and that is with a view to create a coming out guide that will go on the website, exploring coming out in different settings. And not mentioned on there, but definitely taking place, is a youth focus group for care experience LGBTQ+ young people. And after each of these youth focus groups, we've been creating insight reports, which is a little bit of what I shared today. But if you want to sort of see everything I've shared in a little bit more detail, you can go to the Stonewall Young Futures website, and there's a page called "Do You Work with LGBTQ+ Young People?" And you can find those reports there, as well as lots of other really useful resources. And finally, and most importantly, almost done, implementing feedback and recommendations from young people is something we're constantly working towards, creating new pieces of content, and all of that is guided by what LGBTQ+ young people tell us is what they need, and what will help them take that next step. I will bring Nick back up for Q&A now. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
I'm really interested. I think it's a stunning piece of work. I'm really excited about it. The thing to me that is missing from there, but I'm assuming that you're doing it, is talking to them about unions.
So,
because young people don't seem to know about unions, and Margaret Thatcher worked very hard to make sure that they know. So please tell me you're doing something about unions.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. It's so nice to see union representation here today as well. So to union representation, great. And yes, so we've got a page on there which says LGBTQ+ support, and that's where you can find, or young people can find support about their rights. Now, at the moment, the main signposting we have is towards ACAS, because that's the first thing we did. We're building up our own resources on information about the Equality Act and things like that. And then we're waiting. It's just, so we're unionised, I'm unionised, we're unionised at Stonewall, but there was a bit of debate over which union to signpost to. So I think at the moment we're just going to
sign the most of them all.
Yes, yeah, but not all of them have the most LGBTQ+ inclusive resources. So we are going to put it on there. And I've actually, someone who used to work at Stonewall is now working at TUC, I believe. And so we will have unions on there. But young people have asked us about that, because not only do they not know about unions, most of the young people we work with had no idea that at workplaces there are things called LGBT networks, and people are like, whoa, there's somewhere that I can join at work. So it's kind of getting that knowledge up and about. But yeah, unions is a really crucial thing, 100%.
Thank you. Good.
Any other questions? Of course, yeah. Oh, sorry.
I was just, before starting working in education for 25 years, I went into teaching in the last 15, I suppose, and before that I used to work for the local authority and also as a youth worker. As part of that, I also work with children not in educational development training. And I wonder how much you link with coexisting organizations that are more local to the areas, and therefore ensuring that your work is, you know, disseminated as much as possible and that it's out there for everyone to, you know, because not all schools are great at sharing information, as you know, I'm sure you find. So yeah.
As much as we possibly can. So one of the things we're key with this project is we don't want to reinvent the wheel or kind of repeat anything that's already being done. And I guess we're using the benefit of Stonewall being around for quite a while, but also having partners across the movement. So for some of the schools here might be part of Stonewall's School and College Champions Programme. And we also have our Children and Young People Services Programme, so that's for local authorities. And all of them are being made aware about this project. So that's a good way to get across to schools across all 4 nations. And then it's actually the partners we're working with, like the Prince's Trust and like Youth Employment UK. They've been great at spreading the word. We're still not quite there. I'd love if anyone has contact. I know Mosaic are here, but other youth groups. There's the organisation UKUI. Is it the UK, Ireland and the islands? They have a network of youth groups across all of those areas. And we've told them about it. So it's just trying to get that information disseminated. And the flyers that,
to me, I've got a private newsletter from all of the delegates who've come in the past conferences. So whatever you need to amplify and send it to me.
Perfect. And we've got, so the flyers I've brought along today, we've also got posters and they can all be downloaded on the site, because we want those posters in any setting. And that's when I mentioned a GP surgery, I mean it, like any setting that a young person might need this support, seeing that kind of poster or service. And a careers service obviously is really useful, but actually any of those touch points. So yeah, we launched, the website went live on February 28th. And we've had, my aim was 5,000 unique users per month, and we did 15,000 over 3 months. So we have got that, which is good, but we do need more. And actually the newsletter, one of the young people in the video mentioned the newsletter. That is for everyone, it's not just for young people. So on the main bit of the site, you can sign up to our newsletter. And again, we'll be letting you know about all the opportunities through Young Futures. So do sign up and we'll get those numbers up too. Thanks.
We've got a question from Barry Buffy online. My first question online. And Barry, hello Barry, thank you very much for joining us. How are you working with schools and FEMHE, or is this project entirely separate?
Not entirely separate. So the separation between, I guess Barry can't respond, but thanks Barry for the question. If it's a question with separation between different schooling, it's not really. So we're working.
So is this project separate from the work that you normally do? I think is what Barry was asking. Am I right? In schools.
Yes, so we have our separate, the Schools and College Champions Programme still runs, and that's, I guess it is a separate programme, but we're all working together. And I guess if the question was around further education, one of our partners on the advisory group is the Association of Colleges. So they've been incredibly useful at supporting. Like I said, I'm not an expert in further education. That's the first thing I'll say. Lila is, but actually having that support I've really needed as the manager for this. So they've been really helpful with spreading the word across FE.
Greg, you had a question, and then Arjan.
I did. It might be a bit cynical, so I'm just going to go for it. So I'm always very hesitant when I hear about corporations involved in like furthering LGBT rights. And so one of the things I was wondering about, and I don't know if you can speak to this, but I was just curious, is there's a lot of information that's being collected by young people, or like from young people, in order to talk about what measures can be put in place and how to support them. The thing I'm thinking about is, where is the line between collecting enough information to know how to support them and collecting information after that to convince people that they should care? That makes any sense.
A little bit more explanation would be helpful. Is that all right?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that there's a minimum amount of information that we can collect from people, like in terms of like an ethical stance, that we kind of want to use the minimum amount of information to have the greatest amount of impact. So You know, because people recounting their experiences and all of this, like there's ethical considerations that need to be made in that. But obviously with getting companies involved in things and the finances that are attached to that that are necessary, I'm imagining that that might not be enough information for them to believe that they should care in the first place.
Oh. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Yeah, I do get the question. Yeah, so it's almost as if the ethics of us needing to hear perhaps people's trauma to persuade a company to give us lots of money to then help those young people.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, get that. So yeah, I guess for anyone who works with corporations, which is quite a lot of us in the room, right? There is that balance. London Pride next Saturday. I know personally, I always feel a bit conflicted about it, but I think it's a beautiful event, and there's all of that balance with corporations. So we have an ethical approach and ethical policy with our sponsors, so with Aviva and Naked Smoothies and any that we bring on board. And I guess the thing I'd say is all of them are members of our Diversity Champions program, which we wouldn't work with anyone through our Diversity Champions program who doesn't support Stonewall's values. And we're not persuading them to sign up to this program and give us money off the back of what we learned from young people. So they were signed up before we did any of our youth focus groups. I don't know if that answers it.
No,
But I do. It's the same. Which speaker? I think it was. I'm going to forget which speaker today, but talked about the different business. Oh, it was from the London Stock Exchange. She's not here, but she mentioned about the different business cases, and I understand why it's said, but I hate talking about the business case for LGBT. It's really gross, really, saying that this is going to, countries with both GDP have got LGBT included, stuff like that. So, really, the reason why these companies are supporting us is the moral business case.
How do you motivate the young people to engage them? That question.
To get engaged in our website.
How do you promote it? What is the aim for them? I mean, obviously they've expressed themselves, but to counteract what?
Yeah, Greg.
Greg is just
So for them to use the platform.
Yes.
So I guess the aim for them to use the platform is if they're looking for work. So we're trying to encourage, kind of get the word out there. So if a young person is looking to take their next steps into education, training or work, they use the platform. I guess the incentive for a young person to take part in our focus group is the financial incentive. And actually that's been one of the best bits of the project, because all the young people we're working with are not in education, training or work. So actually being able to provide them a financial incentive is really useful. But I understand that, I guess, the ethical piece of that financial incentive coming from a corporation. But Stonewall wouldn't be around if we didn't have that, I guess. So it's I guess this conference wouldn't happen without it as well, right?
Which one?
I
I think I'll just have a question.
Hi. So I guess one thing that I was wondering is, so obviously the kind of the things that are being done with the Stonewall Young Futures project, are really fantastic, and obviously they're not things. You're not rather you're not reinventing the wheel. These are not things that are available in exist. Well, but perhaps definitely not to the same degree in existing kind of networks and resources for queer young people not in training, education, or employment. Would you say that lack of resources stems from negligence? Might be the wrong word, but negligence, or from an active reluctance to get involved with these sorts of projects, or indeed, with the kind of work, obviously. Recently in the news, many corporate, parts of the government kind of dissociate themselves with Stonewall and with queer activism in general, queer inclusion in general, perhaps.
I realise I've jumped in everyone. Feel free. I'm happy to answer, but I didn't want to.
You go ahead. If I have anything to add, I will jump in.
So yeah, I think it's loads of things. A major thing is the history still of Section 28. And actually, I was working with a big organisation that they're a not-for-profit organisation that work in the space of getting young people into education, training or work. And they're doing a project at the moment where they're putting together a panel of young people to co-produce something with, and they listed out who they're looking for. And they're saying, we're looking for young people, specifically young people from these backgrounds, because we recognise the challenges they face. They listed out about 15 different things, and they haven't put LGBTQ+ on there. And I think the thing is, people really don't think about it. I think that's my honest answer. And we've shown that by the government research, that the government don't look into that when we're thinking of young people not in education, training or work. I'm not saying the other things don't matter. Young people who are care leavers, young people who are disabled, they're really crucial because they are disproportionately impacted as well. But these major organisations who try and increase employment for young people aren't thinking about us. So I guess that's the benefit of this project. I think it was Lila was talking about the excitement of the census. Another good thing we've been able to work on is Youth Employment UK. Every year they run a youth voice census. I think it's age 18 to 30, and they get thousands of people talking about their access to employment. And this year, for the first time, again, we worked with them and they asked questions about sexual orientation and gender identity, which again, it's the first time they've done it in 2022, which is quite surprising because they've gathered all this amazing research on young people, but they never split it out by LGBTQ plus identity. So I think it's coming out later this year and hopefully we'll get a bit more insight. So I guess the answer as to why resources don't currently exist is because people do often forget that this is a group of young people that need specific support.
And if I may ask a follow-up question on that. So, you know, as you're saying, obviously, it's not brazen, it's not, you know, considered. I guess really at the core of what I'm wondering is, would you say that it's simple forgetfulness, or rather that it's an active choice not to? And, you know, in either case, I suppose that a unique problem is then posed to how this is solved, right? Whether it's a purposeful decision or whether or not it's just people don't seem to remember that they exist.
I think it's a mix.
Yeah.
I think it's a mix. And someone, again, I can forget who someone mentioned treading on eggshells, which is a really good point. At the moment, yeah, right now, there's a lot of people I know, and especially in the school system, because of the anti-trans groups, which are sending out these toolkits, which they claim to be really helpful toolkits, which are some of the most transphobic things you could ever see. People are so scared to sometimes ask the question around trans identity because they're worried they might end up on the front page of the Daily Mail. So I think it's actually a mix. It's partly the environment that we're in. Unfortunately, people might not provide specific resources for young queer people because they're worried of one, getting it wrong, or two, getting cancelled in the right-wing media. And then some of it might just be ignorance, forgetfulness.
I think also that a lot of people, I guess, have a lot of people, I should say, who aren't in regular contact, who don't surround themselves with queer people, tend to end up in this place where they thought, like, well, marriage equality, like, great. So that's that done, I guess. At least that's the sense that I have sometimes. That sad, but a lot of people don't care to consider, like, where LGBTQ plus communities are in the UK, because we're lauded as like very inclusive country, and as others have mentioned, like that's really fraught. That's not really the truth, but I think that's where that comes from.
I saw you had your hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
Two quick things. First of all, I don't know whether you're aware of the unions and how they're structured, how they work, and all the rest of it. But for example, next week there's the TBC LGBT conference where all the unions are going to be there, NEU, NCWT, maybe ATL as well. So at those places, we've got people who are active and are activists and make a lot of effort to be there. So they're the kind of people that you absolutely should be telling people about. And I don't know whether you know about the event already, but I'm hoping you do.
Yeah, I have a link at TEC and someone called Amber, so I think I'm pretty sure she's talking about.
Because they're going to be activists, and they're going to be educators, and they're going to be the people who disseminate to all of their groups as well. But also within the unions, and particularly with NEU and NCWT, we have consultation conferences where we have people from all around the country, Northern Ireland, everywhere. And again, activists and people who feel like they're quite low, they want to know about this sort of thing because it means you can signpost people quickly. We just had ours at NCWT a couple of weeks ago, where the statistics were from, that seemed very, very thankfully spoke about. But those consultation conferences for NEU as well absolutely should be targeting them. And just a second thing is that schools are really busy places, they're tiring places, which I would say 70% of teachers and educators at the moment are like this close to burnout. And we need to make it easier for people in schools. And also, like my head said to me the other week, I want to do all of this, but I haven't got like a rubber stamp. I don't know is there like a gold standard? How do I know that this one is the best one? So I think we need, and particularly Stonewall, we need to push the government to have some kind of quality assurance mark so that schools know which one do I want, which one do I need, what am I looking for, how do I know? It's not enough to have the word Stonewall on things anymore, unfortunately, because of the things it's the way Stonewall's been used in the press. If it all said, yeah, great Stonewall, yeah, we'll definitely do it. We need like a real quality assurance mark to say, this is quality, you need to do it, everything has been checked, and we can just deliver it straight away.
And that's quality assurance for, so this is as a careers platform in a school, a quality mark that says this is quality assured careers advice.
It's government almost.
Well, we could
Ofsted approved.
Cool. You know, the Gatsby Institute, I think they do careers, they're definitely an accreditation for kind of careers guidance, and I've had some conversations with them, so we could look into that, and if we got kind of their logo on our thing, that might, because I completely understand what you say about, so for some schools they don't want to touch it because of how it's been portrayed. So I agree, if we could get that kind of something third party saying this, but the time point is really pertinent that teachers are close to burnout, and what I hope with this tool, it literally is just a web address. So if there's a career session, this could be something you give the young people and say, this is a website you can go to if you want. So I hope that can help.
Yeah,
but I think that's a really good point. Yeah. I'll connect with you after this as well, because I'd love to talk about TC next week and other ways we can connect. So thank you.
We've got some questions online. I'm quite conscious that the people online haven't been able to participate. And I'm conscious that there are people who want to participate in the room. I love it when a session has a lot of questions. And to build on what Bex we're saying, we also need to remember the bigger picture, that we live in a political context where teachers are resource poor. The education budget has been decimated. There isn't enough staff in schools and in education in order to support the needs of the learner. If you've got a disability, additional learning support is a whole kerfuffle, and I blame personally, sorry, but yeah, I'm allergic to that particular political party who shall not be named, but in the UK. So I think we need to also, and also Stonewall accreditation costs money and not everybody can. So the questions online
so one from Josie Milner Day is, what are the hopes for how this project can expand? Is it going to remain online and resource based, or will there be peer mentoring schemes, for example? Also, will your team be expanding? Are there job opportunities within the project?
You've got someone who wants to work for you.
This is a lovely question, actually. Yeah. It will lead really nicely onto my session. It's going to talk about mentoring, right? I think, yes, good. I hope so. So we are in year one. Our financial years run from April to March, and we're in first full year of the project, which is founded on kind of getting it set up, getting the website set up, getting people subscribed to our newsletter, and regularly using the site. Built into years 2 and 3 of our theory of change when we started the project is mentoring and also workshops, and that will be done. And this is actually where the corporates do come in really, really useful. So some of the big corporates we work with will not only be providing us with mentors to be able to mentor some of the young people that use our platform, but also skills sessions. So we'd love to run skills workshops through our platform, which young people can sign up to, obviously online as well as in person, and yet mentoring. And because Pearson are part of our advisory group, and Pearson have been working really closely with Maya and have great experience in mentoring young LGBTQ+ people, we're going to be working together to build a bit of a mentorship program, but starting in kind of years 2 and 3 of our program. In terms of job opportunities, I mean, at the moment, unfortunately, even Tamar's contract is actually ending next week, but she is staying at Stonewall, which is brilliant news. But the corporate funding we've got actually only goes so far, so it is just a team of me going forward. But if we get more corporate funding, if anyone in the room has any, we will definitely start hiring people, because I'm going to need it. So yeah, I guess look at we have a careers page on Stonewall, and you can always apply.
2 more questions, one online, and then Sabah had a question, and then I think they can catch up with you at the break.
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, have we got your contact details on the
Yes, and I will get flyers around as well.
Perfect.
Just says amazing work, by the way, and that they'll be sharing it with their workplace. The final question online is from Bill Schiller. He says, may have missed because they were away from part of the presentation, but what kind of international input do you work with? Sorry.
Bill is from Sweden. He's the is a national lesbian and gay organisation based in Sweden.
Thank you. So he says, I may have missed something as I've been away for a few moments, but I would like to know what kind of international input you work with. I don't mean just killings in Belarus and Chechnya, but also the progress in the Nordic nations, Australia, etc. Rainbow stretched over borders, growing intensity. Bill Schiller of the Nordic Rainbow Culture Watches.
And do you think that's a question about Stonewall or this project, Stonewall Young Futures? I don't know why I'm asking you, because obviously they're two different things.
Do you want to clarify the context of the question? That would be really useful. But for the people interested in international matters, we've got international panelists after the break. We've got the Queer Centre, which is based in 14 countries. We've got Rodney, who's working with an international committee. So maybe we can revisit that question then if they haven't clarified. Sabah?
I was just going to say, Pride Global are launching their certificate of diversity practices, which is almost like a seal of approval for any organisation to show that they adhere to LGBT, like EDI, they work with the LGBTQI plus community all year round. So maybe that's something that they could do in conjunction with schools or what you're doing. So I'll be really happy to speak to you about that.
Definitely, and I'll give you my email after we can hear. Yeah, because I think that's great. This has already been done in partnership, but I just want to bring on as many partners as we can, because there's no point in us trying to create a service that's already out there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So if anyone else wants to get a certificate.
Does it give you practical tips for inclusion in the curriculum? How to embed it into the lesson, how to challenge bullying?
I don't know all the ins and outs, but I can find out and tell you.
Yeah, because I think I see a lot of accreditation, some of them better than others, around how to embed it within an organisation, but schools are completely different matters.
Yeah, no, schools they not do, but I'm just saying that that's something that maybe that's a discussion that could be had, and it's something that could be taken forward with you so that that can be expanded to schools.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you. No more questions, I think. Come back. Okay, can we give a massive round of applause?